Welcome to Launch Today, the podcast focused on what it takes to get your business to $1 million in revenue. From marketing tactics to incredible guest interviews, we focus on sharing behind-the-scenes insight from masters in their field. If you want to grow the revenue for your startup or business, you don't want to miss today, because today's guest is all about how to grow your startup fasterest? Today, we're thrilled to have Brendan Hufford with us. Brendan is not just a founder and a leader in the SEO and SaaS space. He's a multifaceted professional who's left his mark in various industries. He's the founder of Growth Sprints and All In, and I think Growing Up,
Yep.
where he helps SaaS companies skyrocket from 10 million to 100 million in ARR. Brendan's unique approach combines short, focused marketing sprints, which is what CrowdTamers does to a smaller market, combined with deep expertise in SEO, driving growth and visibility for his clients. His dynamic career path from teaching and coaching to pioneering in digital marketing makes him a rich source of knowledge and inspiration. Whether you're seeking insights on scaling your startup, mastering the art of SEO, or anything else around growth and marketing, Brendan's experiences are a treasure trove. So buckle up for a conversation that promises to be enlightening. Brendan, welcome to Launch Today.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it as well. I always like to start by asking, why do you do what you do?
Ooh, good question. I think for me, there's this wonderful overlap between maybe a Venn diagram of I really like this. I think I'm naturally very good at it. And then I've been nurtured into it. It's the nature and nurture piece. So I've
Gotcha.
always been very extroverted as a just person. But then growing up, I moved every 2 years growing up. I got really good at making new friends fast. And then for the first 10 years of my professional career, I was actually a high school teacher and principal for a little bit of it. So having to stare 14-year-olds in the face every single day and be the show, or else they will kill you or eat your lunch, you have to learn to do that and be able to put it on and show up. There is no waiting. There is no procrastinating. You have to be ready to go. And I think that nature and nurture mix makes me a really good fit. And also having an education background, right? Being a teacher by nature, I got very lucky that I happened upon the part of marketing that was education and content marketing and caught that wave early, as opposed to if I had the same skill set but was born in maybe the Mad Men era, my life would probably look very different.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm the son of two teachers. And so likewise, I went through life determined not to become a teacher because being a teacher at a public school pays for crap. And yet I find myself, like you, doing a bunch of courses and training and knowledge sharing as a big part of how I make what I do sensible.
Yeah, I think the creator educator, as my friend Jay Klaus calls it, is definitely the best way to think about that part of what we do, for sure.
Gotcha. What made you decide to start Growth Sprints when you already had also founded All In and Growing Up? Like, why three?
So I think they came about. Growth sprints came from me working inside of agencies, being a part of the business process, the pitch and sales process. They found out really early when I worked at my first agency. I had done 10 years in education, left literally on a Friday. The last day of school was a Friday. And then on that Monday, I was sitting at my desk they didn't even have a desk for me. I just faced a pillar. It was literally a table in front of a pillar and a wall. But I was just so happy
Swank.
not to be in a classroom ever again. I even showed up on that first day in a shirt and tie, as one does when they're a teacher. And I walked in,
Yeah.
and the agency owner was like, "You're a little overdressed there, Hufford." And I was like, "Oh yeah." And he's like, "It's your first day. Respect." And we walked into the office together, and I'm like, "All right, this is gonna be great." But I was a part of that process. They found out really early I could sell. Right, I wasn't a like behind the scenes, don't let them talk to clients type of marketer. Like I was good in the charismatic. I understood all of these things. Like I was just, again, just taking all these skills I had learned and used to make 40 grand a year for being a teacher and transferring it over. But what I noticed was two things. Number one, we didn't align incentives correctly. So agencies, especially in like any sort of like retainer based agency, their incentive is to drip things out, to spread it out over as long as they can and to retain you forever. And I remember one time I got reprimanded that we had churned a couple clients, and I was like, we had these clients for 4 years. At what point do I have to retain them forever? And it broke my young marketer heart. I remember riding home on the train from Chicago to where I live, and I was just like, this is awful. Like the only way these relationships end is with them kind of hating me, or at least being like, you're not doing good work anymore or whatever. Like it almost, when I'm trying to retain you forever, that's not going to work. And I was like, there has to be a better way. And I went through a couple more agencies and just was more fully convinced. I even went in-house at a company called Active Campaign, so it was on the other side of the table, being sold retainers by agencies. And I was like, I hate this model. It sucks. I don't ever want to do that. The other thing that I noticed was that the best outcomes, so again, on aligning incentives, both on investment, but also outcomes for a lot of my core work back then, which used to be SEO only, now has branched out more into other channels for customer acquisition. At that point, SEO, you get better outcomes when you do it, when you do more up front. And I realized, like, behind the scenes, we're already doing all the work up front. We just didn't tell clients that, and then we just drip it out. Why don't I just do it all up front in a series of sprints? And then they have better outcomes. They have a better investment, a way of investing in it. It just felt right. Like, I'm a big feeler, very woo woo about that sort of thing. That was a big reason that I started it. Then off of it, like, I have this problem, Trevor, where I don't just like participating in things. Like, I don't just like listening to podcasts. I'm going to start my own podcast. I don't like reading blogs. I'm going to start my own blog. Same thing with newsletters and everything, like, no matter what. And I remember when I went in-house at Active Campaign, I was trying to join all these marketing communities. I was like, I've never been an in-house marketer. What should I do? So I joined 17 Slack groups, free ones, paid ones, everything. Like, I paid $150 a month for Pavilion, like all this, which was the worst experience of my life. But sorry.
Today's sponsor, Pavilion.
Yeah, it was the worst. $150 a month for some emails. And then they won't let you cancel. Like, you got to like email them 30 times to cancel. Forget that. But I did all those things because I was like, I need people around me to help me. But I already had all these existing relationships. And I'm like, this doesn't exist. I'm going to make it. So I gathered up enough people. We started a Slack group. I think there's like 1,000 people in there now. We intentionally keep it small because a lot of communities fall apart as they grow. That's where All In came from. It was just under this thesis of the only way to go all in on your career is to go all in on yourself. I also wanted selfishly to be able to make like a Nike t-shirt, like their Just Do It. I wanted just to have a t-shirt that said All In the same Futura italics font, which I have.
There you go.
Like
Set your goals reasonable and you can achieve them.
Yeah, and just build, I think the ethos was just build a career you're proud of by becoming a person you're proud of. So wove these two worlds of like career development without sacrificing your soul. There's an element of personal development in there too. And from that, like, we were just sending out emails, like regular emails to members and stuff like that. And I was like, look, I've run a bunch of newsletters for different things before, other projects that we haven't even touched on. But I was like, we need a newsletter. What does a world-class newsletter on this topic look like? And that's continued to evolve. We just hit the 1 year mark recently. I think we have 27,000 readers. That's where the growing up, the newsletter came from, was again, seeing a need in the world, being like, everybody talks about like how to optimize your ads or how to put your keywords in your header tags, like this really tactical stuff. But if I'm a VP or CMO, I have questions about things that don't get answered publicly. Nobody is serving this audience. And those questions are like, how do I hire? What does the team structure look like? I also, Trevor, got super irritated with, you'll notice a lot of my like making things comes from just being mad at stuff that exists. And instead of complaining about it on LinkedIn, I'll just make it. I noticed a lot of like case studies. Like, everybody was talking about Monday.com and, oh, this is why they're super smart. They did all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I've actually looked at the economics of what they did, and it was terrible investment. Like, absolutely insane. They also did a ton of stuff that nobody talks about. So I'm going to talk about it. I made this case study, went super viral on Twitter, did another one on Airbnb where they're not a client, but I did some actual journalism and did more than look in an SEO tool, which is what most case studies are. Went behind the scenes, asked questions. I put out these 2 threads. They went super viral. I'm like, all right, for the industry, right? But I was like, there's something here. So then I changed growing up from being like a curated links newsletter to being like, look, we're going behind the scenes with CMOs and we're going to figure out like, what do the budgets look like? What do their meeting schedules look like? What do the teams look like? How do they hire, attract, and retain really high quality talent? Like, all of those sorts of things that never get talked about. I wanted to be the source for that. So that's where 3 things came from. I've even I'm a chronic like project starter. I'll start 27 new things a year if I don't rein it in. This year is going to be YouTube and video, and I'm only allowing myself to add 1 thing per year, and that's it.
Gotcha. This is my thing. Also, I do chronically start, right? So I did just started YouTube last year, and this year is the year I get serious about it and try to actually make good content. So thanks so much for coming on board and being good content
Yeah,
today.
of course.
You used to do SEO. Now you do, I think, like a lot of digital marketing, right?
It's still a
As
core
a,
of search, but I just think
yeah.
I've matured in like search as a distribution channel. It's not a religion like it
Hmm,
is for a lot of people who have SEO in their title.
gotcha.
They're worshiping at the altar of John Mueller's tweets and stuff. And I'm just like, can we relax, people? Like,
Gotcha.
at some point, this has to turn into money if you want to make a living doing this. So I think I
Yeah,
just
that's
matured
fair.
out of that optimize your header tags type of mindset.
I get you. I also I find it striking, right? The reason why I do crowd tamers the way I do, which is also almost every client is project based, and
Mhm.
it is here's I'll build you this $1 million marketing engine. It's guaranteed, and then when it's done, like we can part ways. It's 7 months later, we can be done, or we can continue, right? But the project's over. I like having that, and not having my clients be. It's been 3 years. Why are you leaving now? Like
Yeah.
clients grow out of what I want to do, and I help them. If somebody wants to take all my stuff in house, I'll help you hire a VP of marketing, right? Go. You're big enough. You don't need me anymore. Fine. That kind of alignment is also, I think, I have been the CMO on the other side a bunch of times of being pitched retainers and going, no, this is dumb.
Yeah.
No, this is dumb. And so the alignment for how agencies work and how I think they should work is mixed up, right? Because I have a defined project, I'm like, if I do it in 3 months, you still owe me the ticket, right? If I do it in 9 months, okay, now I've gotten the bad end of the steel, but it's the flat price either way. So that I like as a way to approach things. So you've got search, you've got some SEO a lot, search some. Founder is going into running something for the first time. They're launching their thing. How do you recommend a founder get their toes wet and say, I built it, now I need to market it. What do I begin with? I know you work with 1 million to 10 million, but surely you talk to people who are not yet even at a million.
I think so. A lot of my positioning, just to be transparent, and I tell everybody this that books a call with me, like because I get asked about it a lot. My positioning is proxy for can we get this done? I realized too often that working with companies that are too early stage, I would get on a call with a really excitable, meaning founder, and we're talking, and I say, "Hey, what does content production look like?" And they're like, "Oh, I write all the blogs." That's not going to work. Like if I'm just going to dump a bunch of TPS reports on your desk and you're never going to get to them. It's going to go, I love getting paid. It's how I take care. I have 4 boys, 10 and under, and a wife that I adore. It's how I feed my family. But I have no interest in becoming the service version of shelfware where they just are like, oh, this is an amazing strategy. Thank you so much. And it just goes right back there on the shelf with the books and we never see it. Yep. We never see it again. And I got challenged by a mentor and coach of if you couldn't do marketing for yourself, how would you grow? You'd have to grow based on outcomes and results, which means I have to only work
Yeah,
with people that can do the stuff we're talking about. And I have worked with pre-product founders on messaging and IP and stuff like that. I have worked with a lot of different stages, but what I've found is you have to make sure that whatever you're selling them is something they can actually use at the stage that they're at. So I think part of it is vetting channels and being like, what are the right channels for us? What do we know already? I've noticed I've also had really well meaning founders that are like, I built this product because I didn't, similar to me, I didn't like this product I was using. So I basically just built it for myself. And now I want to sell it. And they've never talked to another human about it. They've never
yeah,
asked, does anybody else have this problem? They're just like, of course they have this problem. Everybody hates this one part of Salesforce. So that other people must. And I'm like, I love your thesis, but step one is you have to find 50 of them and show this to them. And let's start having those conversations and figuring this is the crux of marketing, especially early stage. Everything has to come out of customer conversations. And I think sometimes, again, addicted founders will use that like really terrible Ford quote of if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
yeah,
I hate how that. First of all, that guy's a Nazi sympathizer, so let's stop quoting him in business. Second of all, he was like the eighth car. He rewrote history because the Model T kind of won. He was able to rewrite history and be like, "We were the first car. It's you were the eighth car. Like Oldsmobile and all
yeah.
these other cars were before you. You already had proof of
Oh yeah,
concept. You knew people wanted this. You were just able to scale it." Great, respect. But I think a lot of times founders, especially in tech and the ones that I encounter and work with, and I say this really lovingly, they just miss that step. They like turn on their scale brain and they're like, we have to scale. And it's like, you haven't even talked to anybody about this yet. This doesn't exist except in your head. So I know it's a really long-winded way of saying talk to customers, but I think a lot of bros say talk to customers on LinkedIn and nobody actually tells people like how to do that.
I get that. I do very much. I try and do this talk to customers, but at scale, right? The way I talk about it, you have your growth sprints. I have my minimum viable sprints.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is if I can build a marketing engine in a week, that's enough to see if people might start a buyer journey before I build the product. That's the way you do it, right? Is you say, hey, I got 4,000 clicks to my website and I got 150 folks to sign up on the landing page for the beta. Maybe there's something there, right?
Yeah.
4,000 clicks, 2 signups, something's not right. So like that kind of thing it's talking to your customer, but very much at scale, because I prefer interacting through ads than talking to humans anyway, so it's fine. All right, I think you have some strong opinions about this. I would love to hear.
So bad, dude. I can't help myself.
No, it's great. I love it. It's good content with a capital C, right? What makes a good digital services agency, right? Most founders, like every founder I talk to, they got screwed by a previous marketing agency and they're mad about it.
Mm-hmm.
What makes a good marketing agency where you can go, oh, this is one that won't screw me?
That's a good question. I think I've jokingly said, I've even made LinkedIn posts from, hi, I'm Brendan. I'm the second person you hire for this, almost always.
Yeah.
And there's even another company that I found myself, I come after. They're like, oh, we worked with so-and-so before. And I'm like, this is like the 6th time I've heard that. It's interesting, right? Like there's some companies that build a reputation of, hey, they can sell the dream, but they don't give outcomes.
Yeah.
So I think there's a couple pieces to it. And I'll give you the piece I'm really good at and the piece I'm really bad at. The first piece is outcomes and results, right? Like getting the work done and getting results. I'm very good at that. The other piece is the relational piece. Honestly, like even before I thought about investing in video, I invested in this camera and that light and all these things here, right? Even the microphone is not an ideal microphone. It's a shotgun microphone because I didn't want, here, I actually have this other one right here. This felt weird. It's beautiful, buttery audio, but I have a thing between me and my clients. And I
Gotcha.
didn't like how that felt. So I stopped using it. And I really started to care if we're all going to be on screens and Zoom and stuff, I have to make this experience as dialed in as possible and as thoughtful as possible. So I even hired somebody that like helped me design stuff behind me, like all of this. Because the second piece is communications. And I've invested heavily in it. I'm working on systems to get better, but I am not a big agency. So the pro of working for me is you get somebody extremely senior that if I was sitting at a big agency, I would cost you 15 or 20 grand a month. I'm going to work with you at a fraction of that because we're going direct. You don't have to pay some bloated agency fee. But the problem is the downside is you have me. I am a human. I have one inbox. I have one Slack instance that has multiple channels for different clients, but I'm not going to respond to you as fast as somebody else. I'm going to lose something at some point. Like those, and it's also nobody says that stuff in like the sales process. Everybody's no, it's polished and buttoned up, and look, I've got my Patagonia North Face vest on today, and look at how professional and tech I am. Like they don't say those things, and I think it's really refreshing when somebody's I can tell you, and then I'm going to give you 3 of my references. They're going to be honest with you too, and they're going to tell you they've had similar experiences, and it's worth knowing both sides, and like also being like, is that still a good fit? If you need the buttoned up corporate thing where they're going to on a 12-month retainer, but like comms is going to be really tight, they're going to put on their suit jackets every day, even though they have board shorts beneath the camera and stuff. If that's what you want and that's what you need, because you have, for whatever reason, you're a global company and you need somebody buttoned up, the results are going to be very mid at best, probably borderline shitty, but they like the comms to be real tight. Great. You can hire somebody for that, right? They're going to send you a bunch of gift cards and do all these like corporate-y things. That's cool. I don't know. I think like the best thing is somebody who's going to be upfront with you about what the process looks like. And I feel like far too many are not. They're just like, I'm going to copy what all the other agencies do because it's better for the agency.
I gotcha. I gotcha. I think there's a couple interesting things you surfaced there. One is outcomes definitely matter, right? And having somebody who leans on their outcomes is important. I think too many agencies, and I saw this all the time when I was CMO, one of the things I deliberately decided not to do, like you have, is they say, great, you talk to the senior guy, he closes the deal. And then what a 22-year-old first job out of college owns the client.
Oh, that bait
And
and switch
that's when you,
sucks.
that bait and switch. And like every agency at scale does it. And so I never want to have a team of more than like 12
Yeah.
in my company, and I want to be the strategist for all my clients. I don't write the copy anymore. I don't design the ad, which is for the best given how good a designer I am. I don't cut the videos. Like, I don't do that anymore.
Yep.
But I'm the one saying this is what we need to do. And that means you get the benefit of, yeah, like you, I'm a grumpy old CMO. I've been in the space, I've been marketing for longer than some of my employees have been alive.
Yep.
Right, I've been doing startup marketing. So, okay, I'm gray haired and wrinkled, and I have young children too, and it sucks the life out of you like a vampire. It's fine. That means you get that senior experience, and then you say, hey, with a team of 6, right? And then you get it for a fraction of the cost of hiring your own. And if you do it that way, I think I would advise any founder listening to this, right? What you want to do is not get the guy in the suit jacket and the board shorts who sells you the idea and then yeets out.
Yep.
You want to talk to the person who's doing the work. And if you check that in the call, they're like, yes, I will be your strategist. You will talk to me. That has a higher chance of being a good client than who knows who you'll talk to in the end.
Yeah, I remember being at a previous agency and I was the one, I didn't get to do the selling process, but I had to manage that whole side of the business, which was, we scaled from $5 to $10 million a year, which was great. But I remember getting in trouble when people, again, this is second separate agency from the earlier story, but I get in trouble when people churned and they're like, why did they churn? And I'm like, I have to look my boss in the face and I'm like, you were in the sales process. What you sold them was this magic. And then we
It
handed them
can't be
over
done.
to Todd, and Todd is still in college. Like Todd graduates in 3 weeks and you're paying him 60K a year and this client is worth 600K a year.
Yep.
What, like,
Yep.
it's cool that you're trying to have a 90% arbitrage here, but I can't prevent that churn because I'm not involved enough in those pieces. And I think a lot of people working in-house have experienced enough of that where they're like, cool presentation, but what's actually going to happen? And I think the more you can tell them, especially if you're signing them up for retainer and you can't tell them what you're going to do in month 6, like that's a huge red flag. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
Oh,
I'm
that's
I'm
such a
not
good
in the
point.
business of poo-pooing other agencies, but I am in the business
No.
of like selling a subpar product that you know is subpar because the economics are better for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Awesome. All right. So let me ask you a little less straight businessy question. What's a book you've read in the last year you like?
Ooh, this is, hold on. I'm going to give
Oh, you
you,
have one.
okay. Does it have to be a business book or can it be,
No.
oh, okay.
No. A book that you've really thought was good.
Man, I got it. I have to go with, there's been a series that I have loved. I was actually recently chatting with one of my friends about it called Red Rising by Pierce Brown. It is
I
without a doubt one of the
think my
best.
wife is reading that one.
It's amazing. Uh,
That's the yeah. My wife is reading that one. I've been seeing the book covers in the house.
Best series I've
Yeah.
ever read in my whole life. And I've read a lot of like
Wow.
sci-fi and
Okay.
fantasy. Masterfully deals with it under the best, not like some like weird, we're going to get in the weeds here, not under some you're drowning under the waves of world building like some like Brandon Sanderson books where it's like I got 83 pages where they're like he was the 7th king of the kingdom of the north who was the 4th region and you're like, oh my god, like I need to read a wiki to make it through the first 10 pages. It's not that. It is a very simple
Gotcha.
world that expands to be absolutely beautiful. It is a cool universe with cool, not your usual tropes and stuff. That he also writes from a multiple characters point of view, which keeps things interesting. But also the characters will lie to you. I love the craft of writing, where a character
Ah.
will, although it is like first person, they will intentionally not tell you things that are happening until something comes around and happens, right? There's this whole scene where they're walking in a garden, the main character and his mentor, and the bad guys show up. And then as soon as they walk through the door, everything explodes. And you found out that as he was walking with his mentor, he was dropping little like bombs and grenades behind him as they're having this
Gotcha.
wonderful like father-son conversation and stuff. And it's just it's all in your feelings, especially if you have dad issues. Like there's all of that happening. And I love that. I love when characters deceive you or maybe leave things out and you find out later. I love that. And it's also a wonderful piece of, yes, it is some of the best science fiction I've ever read in my life, but it also deals with a lot of issues of masculinity and father and son relationships and like male friendship relationships. And that for me is beautiful and wonderful, and it gives like some of the best like character evolution, especially from a guy who myself personally, like I'm still trying to, like I'm almost 40, I'm still trying to figure out like who the hell I am on a regular basis. Stuff like
When you
that
grow
is
up,
really
yeah.
wonderful, and it's also just like really good writing. Like it's I think there's probably, what is there, 6 7 books so far, and
Okay.
it's the most highlighted thing. I use this app called Readwise that shows me my Kindle highlights every day.
Yeah.
And it's those highlights that them and Brene Brown are like the ones that I see every single day that like really mean a lot to me.
Awesome. One thing studies all show, if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm a business owner, you guys are a bunch of nerds. Studies all show reading fiction improves your empathy, which is one of the most important traits for a leader. So don't denigrate that Red Rising trilogy, or now trilogy, septology, whatever it is now, might be valuable for you. I'll give you 2 recommendations I've liked. One is, have you read The Expanse?
No.
You need to read The Expanse.
Okay. I'm into
It
it.
is, I think, now 9 books. It starts with, I think it starts with Leviathan Wakes, and it is the characters don't lie to you so much, but the progression of characters and the world building isn't super intense, but there's a lot going on. It's science fiction, and it is set in a world where everything's not as nice as maybe we'd all would have liked for it to have been, right? So it's not dystopia, but not phenomenal either. Really good TV series as well,
Hmm.
but the books are better than the TV show, which is usually the case. There's one. And then for a one off, if you want a book that the characters lie to you, Red Shirts by John Scalzi.
Oh, that's
That can
so
be
funny. I was like, I
really
really
fun.
hope he recommends a John Scalzi book. That's so I just read Starter Villain as well, which I wasn't sure about, but I was like, I'll give it a chance. And I was like, this is any book. I also appreciate, this sounds silly. I really like Will Wheaton as
He's
an
a great
audiobook
reader.
narrator. He did
Yeah,
Ready Player One, and
he
then
did.
he is the reason I found Red Shirts, which is my introduction into John Scalzi, who's also lovely on
Okay.
Threads. If anybody wants to follow a great author on social media.
He is. I followed him on Twitter ages ago, and of course he abandoned Twitter after Elon Musk bought it. And now I follow him on Threads as
Yeah,
well.
Red
Yes.
Shirts is super good. I've read a bunch of his books. Also, highly recommend that.
Yeah, great. They had a humble bundle, I think, a month ago
Hmm.
with 14 of his books for $12, and I went, you know what? I only own a few of them, so I got them all. Awesome. Great to nerd out with the fellow science fiction fan.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you liked Old Man's War and that kind of stuff, then you'll definitely like The Expanse. It is not military SF, but it is science fiction with military bits that is as deeply charactered and plotted as Old Man's Warriors.
very
And
cool.
so, like, it's a very good series. Yeah, all right, awesome. I think, yeah, I've got time. What's the impact you want to leave behind you in 10 years?
I don't think a lot about. I just had a conversation. I have a 10-year-old, and he was like, "I just want to be famous. I want people to know me and remember my name." And I'm like, I get that, um, but I would also let you know that like the Queen of England was one of the most impactful people in the world that was alive very recently. I would argue she had some of the biggest global impact you could have as a single human. I don't ever think about her. I don't ever think about her. And I think that sometimes we over being remembered, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think a ton about legacy outside of my family. I think the biggest thing that I want is maybe like twofold. So professionally, I want to be there to help people. I really do believe that as humans, like the best goal to have is just to reduce the suffering of others. Like I fully believe that life is really hard. It is a lot of suffering. If I can reduce that suffering for other people, that means a lot to me. That's how I want my kids, my family, my community to be the impact there. And then professionally, I want the same thing, right? I want to help people grow and accelerate their careers and do work that they're proud of and be people that they're proud of. And you can see that a lot of like my business stuff, although, yeah, like I want to help a lot of companies get more customers. I love software. I can literally not shut up about it. It's super fun. But I think if we stack on top of that, like what is the end goal? I think that's the impact that I want to have.
Awesome. That's cool. I also don't like, yeah, being remembered in history. One, almost nobody famous likes being famous.
Yeah, I'd much
I
rather
forget
be rich
who
than famous. My
exactly.
10-year-old
I
feels
think
the
it was
opposite,
Jim Carrey.
but he'll learn.
I think it was Jim Carrey who
Yep.
said, "Everybody who wishes to be famous, I think they should just try being rich first. And I think you'll like it much better." Because that's like all the things you actually want are like my bills are all like if all my credit cards were on auto pay, like that's wealth to me. Job's done. I did it. And that's way better than having people stopping in the street and say, "Oh, I know you." I'm like, I don't care if you know me. But I do think like my goal is, and I published this on my blog a couple of years ago, help 1,000 startups make $1 million a year by the end of 2028.
Yep.
And that's because the world doesn't need billionaires. Billionaires are not useful, but
Totally.
millionaires are really useful.
Yeah. If you want to
And
talk about like immediate community impact and things like
yeah,
that, I absolutely agree. I think
and so
more
that
of
was
that piece. And I think also like having disposable income. And I say this as somebody who used to make 40 grand a year as a teacher and didn't see an end in sight where I could make dramatic, like I wasn't going to double my income anytime soon.
yeah,
Um, and looked at what that meant for my life and my family. I can tell you that I am a lot more useful to the people around me and able to be more helpful to others by making more money, for sure. That's
yeah,
absolutely true.
that is really true. Yeah,
And I also say this as somebody who like really thought once I made a certain dollar amount that I would be happy. I know we're
yeah,
getting really existential, but I really got wrecked for about 6 months when I got everything I wanted and was still unhappy. I did not know.
yes,
Every year I'd be like, "This is my last year teaching. I'm going to break out. I'm going to do the thing," and I never could do it. And that was really sad and frustrating. Every year I started the year feeling really defeated, but I'm like, next year I'm going to work on my side hustles. I'm going to do it. And then I didn't. And then eventually I did. And I was still the same person. And I still had to wrestle with all the same stuff. And I wasn't prepared for that. And I realized looking back that a lot of it was marketing hype of quit your job, become a millionaire. And I'm not that. But like, I thought that was the goal. And then I was just like, oh, they're all miserable too. I'm still miserable. I have to figure out other things. I'll give you an example, Trevor. I forgot about hobbies. I forgot hobbies. I thought everything had to be monetized. Like my brain was so hardwired into business that like, which was great because it gave me the escape velocity. But I thought everything had to be monetizable. Like I had to, everything's a business. Oh, I could do this and I could do that. And I could make money from this. And I mentioned him at the start of the show today. Like Jay Klaus was like, yeah, I told him this idea for a podcast. He goes, hobbies are chill. I was like, wait, the podcast is just a hobby? And he's like, yeah, man, you don't need to make money from that. Just do it because you want to make it. And I'm like, oh. And I like started playing video games again. And I started like reading for
ah,
fun. And I hadn't done any of that in a long time. Everything was business. And that was really helpful for me to get back to these are hobbies. I don't have to post this on Instagram to get followers because it fulfills me. I genuinely forgot those existed. I know that sounds crazy, but I think there's other people that can probably relate.
no, definitely. I took up woodworking deliberately to be a hobby that I wouldn't monetize. And you can see the bookshelf behind me. No one buy this. I built it with my 8-year-old son, so some of the bad woodworking is my fault to be sure, but I had help. Yeah, the idea of and being able to say, "Hey, I built a bookshelf with my son."
Yeah.
And he's learned how to build a bookshelf. Like that's great for him, right? Would anybody pay for that bookshelf? No. That's okay too, right?
Yep.
And like eventually I've got that's January 1949. National Geographic is there, and you can see this one's empty. But eventually, I'll have December 2023, all of them in
That's
row.
cool.
So that's my backdrop, right? Because I can pull out and leaf through it, right? Speaking of hobbies and things you enjoy doing, what I love to do is look at this and be like, "Hey, like the articles are cool, But I love the old ads. Seeing how people used
Mm.
to advertise for a Cartier pen or
Oh,
whatever
that's so cool.
is so cool. Or randomly, like people just did marketing differently back then. I found um, just the other day the back page, full page ad in a National Geographic, which it was a big magazine
Yeah.
for Union Carbide, right? Just a chemicals company, just a pure branding spend that we make chemicals. And I'm like, what was the goal of a branding spend in Nat Geo for synthetic diamonds? What's going
Yeah.
on there, guys?
I love that though because the craft was also different. I have you can't see it over here. I have a very maximalist office, so my walls are literally it's just stuff separated by an inch here and there. It's like maximalist, right? Is what the design. But I want very much to have a piece of my wall just be ads. Like I want the old Porsche ads. I want the original like Nike print ads. I also love those like print ads. I love like those Ogilvy ads where I'm just like, oh, it's so good. That sort of stuff.
Yeah.
What was the one like? Do you have the courage to make $1 million a year? And I'm just like that. I love words and copy and stuff. So yeah, I love that. That's really cool though. I didn't even think that the ads would be in there, but you're absolutely right.
It's the best part, in my opinion. It's cool to read the articles too, although there's a very like colonial white man's burden thing in all of these old Nat Geos,
Yeah.
right?
But people
But
kept those. Like
okay,
when my
yeah.
great grandmother passed away, I remember when I was little, just stacks of them. And we're like, what do we do with these? Everybody kept them. They were a very important like
Oh,
cultural piece.
yeah, they're incredible, and I love flipping through and looking at the old photos is awesome, but also the old ads are so
That's so
fun.
cool.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I think very existential. Is that, by the way, is that Marcus Aurelius in your backdrop there?
It is. Sometimes the camera thinks he's a person and I'm not a person, so it'll zoom in
The
on him.
focus shifts. I like this. The stoicism, I think, is also when you reach hedonic satiation
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, hey, all my bills are covered. And then you go, then why am I still unhappy? Marcus Aurelius was one of the richest people of his time, right? He was an emperor
Yep.
and he had to grapple with, but I don't like me. What do I do?
Yeah, meditations. I had followed Ryan Holiday for his work in marketing, and then he put out a book that I probably sat on Obstacle is the Way for 2 years. I bought it on Kindle. It was $1.99 on Kindle one time, and I'm like, all right, let me get it. Sat on it, and then was really struggling and read it, and started reading his other books. I have it's hard to see, but I have Amor Fati on the inside of this arm, Memento Mori on the inside of this arm. They face me because they're reminders to me. I remember when I got the tattoo,
Yeah.
the artist was like, "Oh, you want it upside down?" And I'm like, "No, man, I'm not getting these to show other people. Like, I want it to read for
Not
me."
remember you will
It's also
die.
why it's
Remember
not
I
sideways.
will.
Like, it only reads properly to me. But
Yeah.
his books and his work generally has had a very big impact on my life. When I was still a high school teacher, I used Donors Choose, where you can like sponsor classroom
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
I put a thing on there for Donors Choose to get me a classroom set of Obstacle is the Way, and Ryan funded half of it. I literally just cold emailed him. I'm like, hey, I put this up, wanted you to see it. He tweeted it. He funded half of it, and the rest was funded in 15 minutes.
Wow.
I've had a chance
That's
to
nice.
write for Daily Stoic, which was really cool to share like my experience putting some of this stuff into practice and what it means to me. So yeah, you asked like what book Obstacle is the Way is like very often my go-to with that stuff. I just think it's been co-opted by so many of the like TikTok bros that I'm just like
Gotcha. You're
I don't.
leery of
It
recommending
associates with
it.
the wrong audience, so I get like
I
hesitant to
get you.
share that. But as somebody who has a full sleeve of Christian iconography tattoos, Stoicism equally has had, and I feel like the Venn diagram is overlap is maybe a little bit more than people would like to admit. Has also been like very meaningful for me.
Interesting. I feel like you can recommend meditation safely because a lot of people don't read the source. Because Marcus Aurelius wasn't the gifted wordsmith of some of the other ancient writers. Like all Gauls divided into three parts. Okay, that's catchy. I get it. But the
It,
meditations don't roll off the tongue quite so easily.
and I felt Ryan's work also makes it more accessible because he
Yeah.
like applies it to modern day stuff. But you'll read these titles and you're like, all right, the book is called Stillness and is the Key. Got it. Stillness. I need to meditate, get some quiet time, blah blah blah. Again, like I didn't read that book, And then you're like, oh, this book is about John F. Kennedy and Tiger Woods and their daddy issues, and they couldn't reconcile their issues with their fathers. So they live these insane lives of being super high
Yes.
profile, but then their personal lives were a mess. Like, I'm literally mowing my lawn, just like holding back tears listening to this audio book. So I'm just not
Gotcha.
prepared for these lessons, but I've always appreciated that this is accessible in modern day life, right? Yeah, it's been really, especially like having kids and dealing with health problems and issues, and transparently us going through like even just having a family and miscarriages and things like that are very hard visceral experiences. This has allowed me to be a little bit more resilient, a little bit better. So I recommend it to a lot of people as well.
Awesome. Yeah. I agree. Fatherhood makes you really decide, who do I want to be? The first time you see your kid do a bad habit of yours is when you're like, oh no,
Yep.
I taught him that and I didn't mean to.
Or like, why do you have this standard for him that you don't have for yourself? Are
Yeah.
you setting a standard for yourself, but you're putting it on him because it's easier than if you just fix that shit? A lot of that stuff happens.
Yeah, true. I hadn't thought about that. Awesome. This has gotten deep. This is about founders and growth, but I think a big part of founders and growth is whether you grow or you succeed, there's a lot of stuff in the head that has to be right.
Yeah.
And it's not right by default for most of us. That's fine. You can take on tools and mental models and tactics and find ways to work with it. And that's an important part of success too, because you won't be successful if you end up adopting self-sabotaging behaviors because just your brain gets in the way. So it's gotten real deep, but I appreciate it, Brendan.
Yeah, man. I appreciate the chance to talk about some other stuff.
All right, I think that's a pretty good wrap to the show. We've come down to the basis of it. Daddy issues are why we all do what we do. Any last thoughts you want to use to tie the show up with a bow?
Um, I think at the end of the day, when people look back at their careers, you see this trope a lot of nobody's gonna be on their deathbed and be like, man, I wish I would have worked 4 more hours. No.
Right.
So I really do think that the only way to build a career that you're proud of is what I said earlier. The only way to build a career you're proud of is to be a person that you're proud of. And this is, again, silly, but I think about it a lot of this idea of if I asked you to name all the people that you love, how long would it take for you to name yourself? And I think about
Oh,
that, and I
wow.
think that there is a piece of this where, especially in tech, where you have to be able to show up and be a whole person. Some people don't encounter that. Some people encounter it like day one working in tech. Other people don't encounter it until they've sold 3 companies and they don't speak to their children anymore and they're on their like 6th divorce, right? Like then they encounter it. But you are going to encounter that at some point where you're going to have to reconcile with, am I proud of myself? Am I happy with who I am? So I hope
I
this is
get that.
helpful for people to think through that.
Yeah. I had, at the last job I held, I was CMO for a crypto company. And they brought on a new CEO, and his very first day, he said, look, Trevor, I don't know you from a hole in the ground, but you're fired. And I was like, this is fun. Thank you. Why? He's because I'm bringing my old CMO, which is fine. But he was also like, if you would, I was commuting every week to and fro. I at the time had just my son, and they were in Toronto. I was in Montreal. I would commute 3 days a week over and then fly back. He's look, if you just come be here full time, we'd keep you. I'm like, no, I have a kid. I had a kid, and every Sunday when I left the house, he'd cry in his bed because I was leaving for the week, and I wouldn't come back until Saturday. He wouldn't see me all week, and I was off doing my job. And I'm like, you fucked up, buddy. You did the wrong thing. I can't imagine making that life choice. So, is that me being a person I'm proud of? I don't know. But I instantly was like, no, I won't do it. I didn't even entertain the thought because I'm like, if I'm making very good money, it was like $340,000 a year as a crypto marketer, awesome. But just, and then had that be my life? I was like, no, man. I think it is, right? The money
Mm-hmm.
won't make you happy. Speaking to your kids when you're 70 might.
Yeah, I've encountered this as I've gotten older that you're going to have different views of your parents at different milestones, right? When you get married, you question, when you start your career, you question your parents' careers, right? All of a sudden your brain switches and it unlocks this new piece where you were like, I love my parents. They're the best. They're great, or whatever, however you feel. That's not everybody's experience. But like then you start your career and you're like, wait, what was that you did in your career? That was stupid, right? And then you get married and you question their marriage. Then you have kids and you question your parents as children, as like You see it through a
Parents.
different lens, and your brain automatically goes, oh, that's what they did. Do you want to do that? Oh no, you don't want to do that. Wait, you don't like that they did that. Like, it creates all this stuff. I want to parent my children for who they are when they question me on all my crap. And I'm probably going to make a lot of mistakes
Interesting.
along the way. Not to
We
turn
all
this
do.
into a parenting podcast, but there is very much you have to parent for who they're going to be when they're 30, right? And I think about those types of things a lot too, especially having young boys and being an only child myself, primarily lived with my mom growing up. There is a big piece of that of I need my life to fit this stuff. In fact, a big reason I got out of education was I was an assistant principal. I was climbing that ladder. I would have to go to sporting events, like school sporting events, needed an administrator there. So I
Yeah.
thought to myself, I'm going to be at my school's basketball game, missing my son's basketball game.
Your son's.
I can't go to
Wow.
your
Yeah.
game because I have to watch these other kids that I don't care 1/100th of what I care about you. I have to watch them play. That hit me,
Wow.
and for the privilege again of making 45 grand a year. Whole
Yeah.
other issue that I have desperately thought about solving, just how we fund public education in our country. But the core of that is like my lifestyle has to fit my family. That's just how I feel. It's not for everybody, but being on the receiving end of that, I know what I want to do now that I'm on the giving end of it.
I get that. Brendan, thank you so much for your generosity with your time and your openness on this podcast today. Next week, we'll have another show. We'll be talking with, I don't even know who yet because I have a couple folks who haven't booked. But we'll be talking about growth, how to scale and grow and succeed. So be sure to follow on LinkedIn or on YouTube or whatever. If someone wants to follow you, Brendan, where do they go?
I'll pretend it's because I'm good at SEO, but you can probably Google Brendan Hufford and misspell it as much as you want. It'll still come up,
Nice.
including LinkedIn.
Nice.
LinkedIn is where I look. I am still such a teacher. I want to share everything I know, all the cool ideas, all the cool stuff. I share my best stuff on LinkedIn. That's also the really easy way to find my newsletter, growth sprints, and the community all in.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Appreciate your time today. And everybody, I'll see you in a week.